Guys, this is insane. The European Union just told 450 million people to stockpile food for at least 72 hours because, and I'm not making this up, they're genuinely worried about war, cyber attacks, and supply chain collapse hitting Europe. Look, if entire governments are telling people to prep, maybe it's time we listen. Today, I'm breaking down the 6 foods you'll absolutely wish you had when crisis hits your neighborhood. Food 1. White rice. All right, let's start with number 1. White rice. And before you roll your eyes thinking this is boring, listen to this. When Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, you know what people were fighting over in the stores? Not the fancy organic quinoa or the artisanal pasta. It was plain white rice. Here's the thing that blew my mind when I was researching this. Experts are calling rice one of our best allies for long-term survival because it literally lasts forever if you store it right. We're talking 30 years, guys. 30 years. Your kids could inherit your rice stash. But here's where most people mess up completely. They buy a bag of rice, toss it in the pantry, and think they're done. Wrong. That bag? It's got tiny holes that let moisture and bugs in. I learned this the hard way when I found little black beetles having a party in my emergency rice. Not fun. The trick is simple, though. Get yourself some food-grade buckets and oxygen absorbers. Sounds fancy, but you can grab them on Amazon for like 20 bucks. Pour that rice in, toss in an oxygen absorber, seal it up. Boom. You've got decades of carbs that could literally keep your family alive when the grocery stores are empty. And honestly, rice isn't just survival food anymore. With inflation hitting everything, buying rice in bulk is just smart money management. I mean, have you seen grocery prices lately? Food 2. Dried beans, legumes. All right, let me tell you something that's going to change how you think about beans forever. When Ukraine got hit in 2022, I was following these prep forums obsessively, and you know what disappeared from European store shelves first? Not bread, not pasta, not even bottled water. It was protein sources. Meat, eggs, dairy, completely wiped out in hours. People were literally fighting over the last packages of ground beef. And here's the crazy part that most folks don't realize. Beans pack more protein per serving than a lot of meat. We're talking 15 grams of complete protein in just 1 cup of black beans. That's basically a decent chicken breast, but these little powerhouses will sit in your pantry for literally 30 years without going bad. Now, the University of Georgia just dropped updated emergency food guidelines this year, and they're basically screaming at people about this. They straight up say that wheat, corn, beans, and salt can be purchased in bulk quantities for pennies on the dollar and have nearly unlimited shelf life. I mean, think about it. These are the same foods that kept entire civilizations alive for thousands of years, way before we had fancy refrigeration and supply chains. Our ancestors weren't stupid. They knew what worked. But here's where 99% of people completely mess this up. They think you need a full kitchen with gas and electricity to cook beans properly. Totally wrong. During the Texas freeze in 2021, when millions lost power for weeks, the smart preppers were sprouting their beans with nothing but water. Takes about 3-4 days, and boom, you've got fresh, crunchy, vitamin-packed food when everything else in your fridge is rotting. Or here's a trick that'll blow your mind. If you've got any kind of heat source, even a tiny camping stove or candle, you can slow cook beans in a thermos overnight. Just pour boiling water over pre-soaked beans, seal that sucker up tight, wrap it in towels or blankets, and by morning, you've got perfectly tender, ready-to-eat protein. The nutritional profile on these things is honestly ridiculous. Beans are like nature's multivitamin, loaded with iron for your blood, fiber to keep everything moving, potassium for your heart, folate for brain function. Your body literally needs this stuff to survive and thrive. Plus, they're filling as heck. 1 cup of beans will keep you satisfied way longer than a candy bar or some processed junk. And get this, recent studies show that people who eat beans regularly live longer and have lower rates of heart disease. So you're not just surviving, you're actually getting healthier. Storage-wise, beans are a prepper's dream. Throw them in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, toss those in sealed buckets, and you're looking at food that'll outlast your grandkids. I've got friends who've eaten 20-year-old beans that still tasted perfect. Compare that to canned goods that start getting sketchy after 5 years, or meat that spoils in days without refrigeration. And cost? Dude, we're talking maybe 30 to 40 bucks for 20 pounds of mixed beans. That's literally hundreds of meals worth of protein. While everyone else is panic buying $8 steaks that'll rot in 3 days, you're sitting pretty with decades worth of nutrition that costs less than a dinner out. Food. 3. Canned meats. All right, here's where things get real. And honestly, kinda gross if you think about it too much. But stick with me because this could save your life. Picture this, it's day 5 of a major blackout. Your freezer's been off for days, that expensive grass-fed beef you bought? Yeah, it's basically toxic waste now. The smell alone could knock you out. But you know what's still perfectly safe to eat? That can of chicken you bought 3 years ago and forgot about in the back of your pantry. Here's the thing. Most people don't know. Canned meats can last at least 2 years in your pantry, but honestly, I've seen preppers eat canned ham from the 90s and live to tell about it. The USDA won't officially say that, but let's just say those expiration dates are pretty conservative. Like, really conservative. I'm talking about cans that are still good decades later, as long as they're not dented, bulging, or rusty. Now, here's where it gets interesting. You've got 2 main choices, traditional cans or those vacuum-sealed pouches. And honestly, the pouches might be your better bet in certain situations. Why? Well, imagine you're dealing with a power outage and your can opener is electric. Oops. Or maybe you're stuck somewhere without any tools at all. Those vacuum packs? You can literally tear them open with your teeth if you have to. Plus, vacuum-packed pouches have a shorter shelf life but will last at least 6 months, and they're way more portable if you need to grab and go. But here's something that absolutely blew my mind when I was researching this. The protein content in these things is insane. We're talking about 20 to 25 grams of protein per serving. That's like eating a chicken breast, but this stuff will never go bad. And during a crisis, when you're probably burning way more calories than usual from stress, manual labor, or just trying to survive, that protein is going to be your best friend. Now, here's the real kicker. And this is something that shocked me and honestly made me a little angry. If you've got kids or you're pregnant, you need to be super careful about mercury levels in fish. Most people have no idea about this. Safe Catch Elite Wild Tuna has the lowest mercury count of any brand on the market, making it a safer choice for kids and even pregnant women. I'm talking about mercury levels so low that pregnant women can actually eat it safely multiple times a week. That's huge, because in a crisis, the last thing you need is to worry about poisoning your family while trying to feed them. And let's talk about variety for a second, because eating the same thing every day will drive you absolutely nuts. You've got canned chicken, beef, pork, salmon, sardines, even things like canned bacon. Yes, that's a real thing, and it's actually pretty good. The psychological boost of having different flavors and textures, that's not just about comfort. That's about maintaining morale when everything else is falling apart. Here's a pro tip that could literally save your life. When you're buying canned meat, don't just grab whatever's cheapest. Look for the ones with pull tabs. Trust me, when you're stressed, hungry, and maybe dealing with an emergency in the dark, the last thing you want is to be hunting around for a can opener that may or may not work. I've been there, and it's frustrating beyond belief. Oh, and here's something most people mess up. Storage location matters way more than you think. Don't stick these in your garage where temperatures swing wildly. Heat is the enemy of canned goods. Keep them in a cool, dry place, and they'll outlast almost anything else in your emergency stash. We're talking about food that could literally keep you alive when everything else has gone to hell. Food. 4. Honey. All right, buckle up, because this story is going to blow your mind. Picture this. It's 1922. And archaeologist Howard Carter just cracked open King Tut's tomb after 3,000 years. He's looking at all this gold, these incredible artifacts, and then he spots something that shouldn't even be possible. Jars of honey, still sealed, still golden, still perfectly edible after 3,000 years. And get this, some very brave archaeologists actually tasted it and confirmed it was still good. But wait, it gets even crazier. In 2012, they found honey in Georgia That's 5,500 years old. That's older than Stonehenge. We're talking about food that was made when humans were just figuring out how to use bronze tools, and it's still sitting there, ready to eat. Now here's why this matters for your survival planning. Raw honey gives you 304 calories per 100 grams, and it's absorbed faster than any processed sugar. But unlike that energy drink that crashes you in an hour, honey provides sustained energy because the combination of glucose and fructose keeps your blood sugar balanced and healthy. When you're in crisis mode and need to keep going, this stuff is literally liquid energy. And here's something most people don't know. Honey is basically nature's first aid kit. Honey naturally contains hydrogen peroxide, which means it's a natural antibiotic sitting right in your pantry. Ancient Egyptians used medicinal honey in 30% of their prescriptions, and they weren't messing around. Even today, the World Health Organization and the American Academy of Pediatrics officially endorse honey as a natural cough remedy. But here's where it gets really interesting for 2025. Food trend reports are calling honey a key player in shaping future innovations, and it's becoming one of the hottest barter items. Think about it. When everything else is spoiling, when supply chains are broken, you've got this golden treasure that never goes bad and everyone wants. The science behind this is absolutely incredible. Honey has less than 18% water content, and bacteria need water to survive. Plus, it's acidic with a pH between 3.2 and 4.5, which creates an environment where nasty microorganisms just can't live. Bees literally use their wings to evaporate the water and add enzymes from their stomachs that create hydrogen peroxide. It's like they engineered the perfect survival food. And unlike your expensive freeze-dried meals that need special storage, honey just sits there in a jar, laughing at time itself. As long as the lid stays on and no water gets added, honey will not go bad. Ever. We're talking about food that could outlast your great-great-grandchildren. The ancient Egyptians were so convinced of honey's power that they buried jars of it with their pharaohs because they believed it was necessary for the afterlife. I mean, when you're planning for eternity, you pack honey. That should tell us something about what we should be packing for our own uncertain times. Food. 5. Pasta. All right, let's talk about pasta. And no, I'm not just talking about your basic Tuesday night dinner here. I'm talking about what might literally be the most underrated survival food on the planet. You know that box of spaghetti sitting in your pantry right now? When stored properly, pasta can last over 25 years and still be good to eat. 25 years, people. Your kids could inherit your pasta stash and feed their kids with it. That's not just food storage. That's a generational investment. But here's what really gets me, and this is something most preppers completely miss. Familiar foods like spaghetti and breads can bring great comfort to families in times of chaos and instability. Look, I've been through some tough times, and I can tell you right now, when everything feels like it's falling apart, when nothing makes sense anymore, that warm bowl of mac and cheese, that's not just calories hitting your stomach, that's your childhood. That's Sunday dinners with grandma. That's normalcy in a world gone crazy. The psychological value of comfort food during a crisis is absolutely massive, and most people don't even think about it until they're in the middle of a disaster, wondering why they stockpiled nothing but protein bars and freeze-dried mystery meat. Now, here's where it gets really interesting from a storage perspective. Unopened dry pasta is good in the pantry for 2 years from the time of purchase, and that's just what the government tells you to cover their legal bases. The reality? Most studies put the shelf life of semolina pasta, stored in its original packaging in a pantry at approximately 2 to 3 years past its best buy date. But wait, it gets better. When protected against moisture, pasta can easily last 10 plus years. And if you really want to go full prepper mode with Mylar bags and oxygen absorbers, we're talking decades here. The secret is understanding what makes pasta so indestructible. Dry pasta has almost no moisture in it. Without moisture, bacteria and mold are unable to grow. The pasta will remain safe to eat for years or even decades. It's basically food that's already been mummified for you. Nature did the hard work, We just put it in a box. But here's the genius part that separates pasta from other survival foods. Pasta, rice, and crackers are filling and offer complex carbohydrates. You're not just surviving on pasta. You're getting sustained energy that actually keeps you going. I'm talking about fuel that burns clean and steady, not some sugar rush that crashes in an hour. When you're dealing with the stress of an emergency situation, when your body's running on adrenaline and fear, you need calories that stick with you. Pasta delivers that in spades. And then there's the versatility factor, which is absolutely insane when you think about it. One ingredient, but how many different meals can you make? Spaghetti with marinara, mac and cheese, pasta salad, chicken noodle soup, tuna casserole, beef stroganoff. I could go on for another 5 minutes. Canned soups are convenient meal starters that can be easily stretched with the addition of vegetables, rice, or pasta to feed more people. You can take 1 can of soup and turn it into a meal for 4 people just by adding pasta. That's not just smart. That's survival mathematics. Here's something else that'll blow your mind: the cost factor. Right now, you can walk into any grocery store and buy a pound of pasta for what? $1? Maybe $2 for the fancy stuff. Quality pastas like dry spaghetti, dry macaroni, and a variety of Italian dried pasta are literally some of the cheapest calories you can buy. Compare that to freeze-dried meals at $15 a pop, and suddenly your weekly grocery budget becomes your emergency prep budget. But here's the real kicker, and this is something I learned the hard way during a power outage last year. Pasta cooks fast and doesn't need fancy equipment. Got a camping stove? A can of Sterno? Even a small fire? You can have a hot meal in 10 minutes. Dehydrated meals for hiking allow you to eat well without carrying excess weight. The same principle applies to emergency situations. Light, compact, easy to prepare. It's like pasta was designed specifically for crisis situations. And let's be real about something else here. When disaster strikes, you're not going to be eating alone. Canned soups are convenient meal starters that can be easily stretched with the addition of vegetables, rice, or pasta to feed more people. Pasta is the ultimate community food. One pot can feed a bunch of people, and everybody knows how to eat it. You're not going to have picky eaters refusing pasta the way they might turn their nose up at some weird survival ration. Kids will eat it, adults will eat it, your elderly neighbors will eat it. It's universally acceptable food that brings people together, which is exactly what you need when times get tough. Food 6. Freeze-dried meals. All right, let's talk about freeze-dried meals, and I'm going to be completely honest with you here. A few years ago, I thought this stuff was just overpriced camping food for people with too much money and too much paranoia. Boy, was I wrong. Picture this scenario. And this actually happened to my buddy Mike last winter. Ice storm hits Texas. Again. Power's out for 8 days. Day 1, everyone's grilling whatever's left in their freezers before it spoils. Day 3, the stores are picked clean. Day 5, people are literally trading toilet paper for canned soup. And Mike? He's sitting there eating beef burgundy that tastes better than what I had at that fancy French place downtown last month. Here's what blew my mind when I started researching this stuff. These freeze-dried meals last 30 years. Think about that for a second. If you bought some in 1995, they'd still be perfectly good today. That's longer than the internet has been mainstream, guys. Freeze-dried products are your best allies in maintaining a balanced diet during challenging times, and the technology has gotten insane. But here's where it gets really interesting. The latest 2025 survival food companies, they've completely changed the game. We're not talking about those military MREs that taste like sadness wrapped in plastic. I'm talking about actual chefs designing these meals. Mountain House has a chicken and dumplings that my grandmother would be jealous of. ReadyWise makes a lasagna that, okay, maybe not better than your Italian mother-in-law's, but close enough that you wouldn't complain. And the convenience factor? One of the major benefits of these meals is that they can be made with room temperature water. Let me explain why this is absolutely game-changing. When Hurricane Ida hit Louisiana, my cousin Sarah lost power for 2 weeks. No gas, no electricity, nothing. but she could still make a hot meal by just adding cold water and waiting 15 minutes. The chemical reaction actually warms the food up. It's like magic, but it's science. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds expensive. And yeah, up front it is. A single freeze-dried meal might cost you $8 to $12. But here's the math that changed my perspective completely. That meal feeds 2 adults easily, sometimes 3 if you add some rice or crackers. So we're talking $4 to $6 per person for a complete, nutritious meal that requires 0 cooking skills and lasts 3 decades. Compare that to ordering DoorDash when your power's out and... Oh wait, you can't. Compare it to driving 30 miles to find an open restaurant when gas stations are closed. Oh wait, you can't do that either. Suddenly, that $8 investment looks pretty brilliant. But here's the real kicker, and this is something most people don't think about. During a crisis, it's not just about calories. It's about morale. It's about your kids not crying because they're eating the same bland canned soup for the 5th day in a row. It's about maintaining some sense of normalcy when everything else feels like it's falling apart. I remember reading about families during the Texas freeze who said the hardest part wasn't the cold. It was feeling like they'd lost all control over their basic lives. Having a good meal, a familiar meal, something that actually tastes like food, that's psychological survival, not just physical. The variety these days is absolutely nuts too. You've got breakfast options like scrambled eggs with bacon that actually taste like breakfast, dinner options like chicken teriyaki, beef stew, even vegetarian chili that doesn't taste like punishment. Some companies are making desserts now. Apple cobbler, chocolate pudding cake. It's like having a restaurant in your emergency kit. And storage? These pouches are resealable, which means if you don't finish the whole thing, you can save it for later. Try doing that with a can of soup. The packaging is designed to be puncture-resistant, moisture-proof, and takes up about as much space as a paperback book. Look, I'm not saying you need to fill your basement with freeze-dried gourmet meals, but having even just a week's worth? That's the difference between surviving a crisis and actually living through one with some dignity intact. When everything else is chaos, when you're stressed out of your mind dealing with power outages and supply shortages, there's something incredibly comforting about knowing you can still sit down to a decent meal. The bottom line is this: freeze-dried meals aren't just emergency food anymore. They're emergency sanity. And in 2025, with everything going on in the world, that peace of mind might be worth more than the money you spend on them. All right, before we wrap this up, I've got to share some critical mistakes I see people making all the time. And honestly, I made most of these myself when I first started prepping. First up, storage mistakes that'll ruin everything. I cannot tell you how many people spend hundreds of dollars on emergency food, then stick it all in their garage next to the paint cans and Christmas decorations. Guys, heat is your enemy. One summer in a hot garage will turn your 5-year shelf life into 5 months. I learned this the hard way when I opened a perfectly good can of rice that had turned into what looked like concrete mix. Keep everything in a cool, dry place. Think inside your house, not the shed. And for the love of all that's holy, keep it off the ground. I once watched a friend lose an entire stockpile because a tiny basement leak turned his emergency supply into a science experiment. Now, let's talk about this EU recommendation. The European Union is telling 450 million people to stockpile at least 72 hours worth of supplies. 72 hours. 3 days. That's their official recommendation in 2025. But here's the reality check nobody's talking about. 3 days is barely enough time for the government to figure out what's wrong, let alone fix it. Look at any major disaster in the last few years. Texas freeze? People were without power for weeks, not days. Hurricane Ida? Some areas took months to get back to normal. Supply chain issues during COVID? That lasted years. So yeah, start with 72 hours, but don't stop there. I'm talking 2 weeks minimum, and honestly, a month feels a lot more realistic these days. Here's the rotation system that actually works, and this is probably the most important tip I can give you. Most people buy emergency food and then forget about it until it's expired. Don't be that person. I use what I call the Sunday check system. Every first Sunday of the month, I spend 10 minutes checking dates and rotating stock. Anything that's getting close to expiration, that becomes dinner this week. Then I replace it with fresh stuff. Make a simple spreadsheet or even just a list taped to your pantry door. Item, quantity, expiration date. Update it when you use something. This isn't complicated. We're not running a warehouse here. But it keeps your investment from turning into expensive trash. And this is crucial. Don't hoard, prepare smartly. There's a huge difference. Hoarding is buying 50 cases of toilet paper because you're panicking. Smart preparation is gradually building a reasonable supply of things you'll actually use. Buy an extra bag of rice this week. Next week, grab some extra canned goods. The week after that, maybe some dried beans. The goal isn't to clear the shelves. That just makes the problem worse for everyone else. The goal is to slowly, steadily, build a buffer that gives your family options when things get weird. And trust me, things are getting weird more often these days. Look, I know this can feel overwhelming. Trust me, I've been there. You're thinking about all 6 foods, storage systems, rotation schedules. It's a lot. So here's what I want you to do right now. Start with just one of these foods this week. Seriously, just one. Maybe it's grabbing an extra bag of rice next time you're at the store. Maybe it's ordering a small pack of freeze-dried meals online. Maybe it's just buying a few extra cans of tuna. Pick one thing and do it. Because here's the truth. Your future self is going to thank you. Maybe that's next month when there's a winter storm and the stores are empty. Maybe it's next year when there's another supply chain hiccup. Or maybe it's 10 years from now when your kids ask how you were so prepared for whatever craziness the world threw at you. If this video helped you think differently about emergency preparedness, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. I'm dropping new content every week about practical ways to protect your family without turning into a bunker-dwelling hermit. Real advice for real people living in the real world. And hey, drop a comment below telling me which of these 6 foods you're starting with. I read every single comment, and I love seeing people take action instead of just watching videos. Your future self will definitely thank you for taking that first step today.